Hey, let's talk about the introduction to what we know as sociology. And this is to go along with, for the most part, introduction books, chapter one, where we learn about the history of sociology. There are, the society will go through changes. It always has, it always is. You can recognize that we're in the middle of one now. And some of these changes we recognize by economically what's going on, or we'll talk very soon about technologically what's going on, what kind of major changes are happening in society. So as I record this video, for instance, 2025, we just came out of an election cycle. And we can see that there's a lot of political polarization. That polarization is usually reflective of changes in our economic system, in the ways that we used to be an agricultural society or a manufacturing and industrial society, and then we were a service society. Some people will say we've moved from the service society to an information society. And that information-based society in some ways is kind of an attention-based information society. Who can get our attention the most? And when we think about who's the most powerful in those kinds of societies, it tends to be the people who are at the top of the economics strata with those types of things. So it used to be that if you owned land or you owned the biggest factories or you had access to oil, you were the mega players. You had the most political power because you had the most economic power. Now, when you think of the Trump administration, for instance, we see that there's a whole lot of power in the hands of people like Elon Musk, or a lot of power in the hands of people like Jeff Bezos, not because they sell books on Amazon, but because they have access to the information structure. People who have their hands in artificial intelligence, like NVIDIA, people who are very much in tune with informationally what that means for our society. And again, we'll talk about this more when we get to society change, and especially when we talk about economics in general. But I say that now because we recognize those changes happening now. It's not very different from the way that those things happened in the industrial age. In the early to mid 1800s, when what we had is this major, major rise in industrial technology, we created or saw the society shift in a major way. And when we talk about the people who we credit as the founders of sociology, it's in that time that they're having that conversation. So your book gives you some of that history, but there's three things I want you to think about in particular. One, it is the rise of industrial technology that really changed our society. When we used to be, and I'm saying this in a surface level because it's not a history class, I'm not giving you a lot of that detail because I'm not a historian, but think about it. We used to live on our farms. We used to live in small, sustainable villages. We used to grow what we needed. We, herded our own livestock, and we sheared the wool from the sheep, and we spun our yarn, and we made our own clothes, and maybe we sold those things to one another at market. But for the most part, we sustained ourselves. At most, we sustained ourselves in small villages. With the rise of industrial technologies, we've got machines now that can, farm and harvest on major levels. We've got steam engines that can help us trade this huge amount of corn, for instance, with a city or town that's miles and miles away. We're no longer sustaining ourselves just on our farms, but there's large corporations and entities that are managing sort of it is that we do to produce the things that we need. So raw goods that's coming out of the ground that are being manufactured for the stuff that we need. Industrial technologies change the way that we're doing that on a large scale. The second thing that does is, with this rise of industrial technologies, and we're no longer sustaining ourselves on these small levels, is we get this rise of cities. People are leaving these small villages and moving into these cities because that's where the work is centralized. There's still farmlands, but now we have corporations and other entities and large landowners that are managing the farms, and those products are coming to the factories where we produce them to the things that we need. We're either packaging food and selling them in stores, or we're making the wool to create the fabric that gets made into clothes at stores or at factories. And so now we're working in different ways in these very centralized places in factories. We live in cities now instead of at home in our villages, which means we may have some separation between our families, or at best, we're working at a factory. So instead of me, you know, planting what I need, harvesting what I need, processing what I need, eating what I've grown, now I work on the factory line, for instance. I may touch this one product that I didn't have in the beginning and I won't see when it's finished. And so we're starting to communicate and relate to people in different ways because we live in the city. We're not the same as the people around us necessarily, the way that we were in our small villages, because I came from my village and you came from your village, and all of these people are together. With the rise of cities come city problems. There's overcrowdedness, there's more crime. You get to see the inequalities of people. Some people have a lot, some people have a little. And then we start to ask questions. What does that mean? Should we only care about ourselves, or should we care about the greater good? So a lot of things happen when we have those cities. And that the change of processing of how we think about it is that third thing. It's political change. Anytime you have some great change economically, you see a great change politically. When we moved away from our villages, for instance, we're no longer the same in the ways that we think about life or morality. Our values used to be very much church-based or religion-based, and we affirmed one another. What you believe is probably what I believe. We grew up in the same place. We do the same thing. We connect and relate to one another because we do the same thing every day. We go to church together, right? When we live in the cities and everybody is different, and I get to see this difference between the haves and the have-nots, I might be concerned with what's happening with these people who don't have, and I might think that we should be doing something to help the poor. Or I might be, well, I have to figure out what I need to do for my own family. Instead of thinking about what is close to godliness and how we make our decisions based on morality, now we're maybe thinking more about individual rights and personal liberties. I don't even make all the things that I need. I work at a factory in an industry that somebody else owns most of this stuff. Now I care about how many hours am I working? How much are you paying me? What are my workers' conditions like? So those economic shifts come with political changes and ideas. So we've got the rise of industrial technology, the growth of cities, and this increase in political change of ideas really sets the stage, not differently than now, that says, what the heck is going on with our world? What's going on with our society? Can we understand what's going on with our society? And so the people who are around are asking those same kinds of questions. And so I hope that you can see this screen. What I want to share with you is that there's a guy by the name of Auguste Comte, or Auguste Comte. He is the person that we consider to be the founder of sociology. He's not a sociologist at all. It didn't exist at the time, right? He helped us know the word sociology. He's not even the creator of this word, but he's the one who popularized it. So we tend to think of him as the father of sociology. He generally thought, he's a philosopher, a mathematician. He generally believed that we can understand the social world if we can observe social phenomena. So if we can observe it, then we can measure it. If we can measure it, we can count it, we can analyze it, we can think about it. This is a big deal because we hadn't really thought much about how to understand social behavior. We generally believed, well, you did what you're supposed to do. Your village, your family, your church, that's how you're supposed to act. If you're not doing that, then there's something off about you. We weren't really trying to understand what people do or why until so much changed around us. And so we were very interested then in this kind of social phenomena. And sociology is born in that kind of environment. It is, by definition, the systematic study of human behavior, or the scientific study of social behavior. That's what sociology is, and that's where we get it from. I'll talk to you in the next video.